Yeah, yeah. For what is the flesh? Without the spirit, there's no best. Yeah, yeah. We live in the West, where the sins equal death. See, my earthly body doesn't mean nothing. I'll die for it if it means something. In this world, it's just long suffering. He sent his son because he loved me. I'm serious. People out.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? So for this video, I really just wanted to get into a recap. I've gone over a lot of information. I've tried to approach this in a way that would have been helpful for me. And so that's another reason why I'm trying to keep these a little shorter and go a little bit slower. That's definitely what would help me. Doing my own research in this, I obviously started talking about that video from Revisionist, but I've looked into quite a few Israelite teachings on this too before I had gotten into this. Some of the teachers that come to mind for sure is Yakoba with the Teo channel, as well as Benaiah. Both of them are and have been putting out a lot of research videos lately in regards to Hebrew geography. But also there's been, like African Exodus, she's been talking about this for a while. TCA has some good videos on region and border breakdown. I don't know if Maria and Holda have been putting videos out on this specifically, so I'm not really sure, where they stand or if they stand together. But anyway, all that to say, I'm definitely listening to all of them. And sometimes we're saying different things between, like this person says this and this person thinks that, and that's fine because we're all seeking truth, and that's really the most important thing to me. I don't really like to create contention between teachings, okay? And I don't look at it, I don't want differences to become divisive. That's what I really don't like. So I feel that we're all united as seekers of truth. And so I would just like to encourage everyone to listen to, these other leaders that I brought up. I've been getting fed by them for years, for a lot of them. And so definitely listen to them, and hopefully with all these teachings from these Israelite leaders, we can start to piece together truth out of these deceptions, right? Because we're all coming out of these deceptions. And that's really the issue. Okay, with that said, again, this is going to be a recap, so I'm going to try not to present too much new information in this one. Yah willing, there will be more videos after this one. So, with that said, one of the first things I brought up was talking about the Red Sea, that translation, which really translates into the Reed Sea, aka the Yam Suf, okay? And so that's why I have this up here. Suf here, Strong's H5488, okay? And here, the first thing it says, reed rush water plant, right? And notice that, water plant. I'll come back to that in just a second, but I just wanted to show, so here's where it's coming up. And we took a look at this in the beginning, but Exodus 2, right? So, and when she could not longer hide him, she took him for an ark of bulrushes and daubed it with slime and with pitch and put the child therein. Okay, so they're talking about Moshe here, right? And she laid it in the flags by the river's brink. Okay, so here, this term is Suf, okay? And it's being associated to the Nile, okay? And then this is again Exodus 2:5, and the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river, and her maidens walked along by the river's side. Okay, so this is the Nile. And when she saw the ark among the Suf, she sent her maid to fetch it. Okay, so these flags are in the Nile. Okay, and then we get to Exodus 10. And Yah turned a mighty strong west wind, which took away the locusts and cast them into the Red Sea here, which is really the Reed Sea. Okay? And on it continues to tell us about this Reed Sea. Now, I want to come back up to this fresh water. Where was that? Okay, I'm sorry. Water plant. Because especially the papyrus, okay, papyrus only grows in fresh water. Okay, so that's why I mentioned this. So just more evidence, of illogical reasoning. Why would a freshwater plant, right, that's associated to the Nile, why would they associate it to the Red Sea, which is a saltwater body? So all that to say, the Red Sea does not have reeds, okay? Now, I did some digging a little bit, and there's actually a papyrus, the dwarf papyrus, that does not, or it can grow in salt water, okay? But it also needs a specific type of soil, okay? It needs alkaline soil, and it appears that the Red Sea coast does not have efficient soil for that papyrus to grow there. So anyway, all that to say, I didn't want to get into that in this study, but go ahead and do your homework on your own if you'd like. All that amounts to reeds don't grow in the Red Sea. Okay, so I'm going to go over to Jubilees chapter 48, okay? And this was something else. I thought I had mentioned this, but I guess I didn't. So this is when Moshe returns, and then I'm going to drop down. I'm going to start in verse 12 here, okay? And notwithstanding all these signs and wonders, the prince Mastema was not put to shame, because he took courage and cried to the Mitzrayim to pursue after you with all the powers of the Mitzrayim, with their chariots and with their horses and with all the hosts of the peoples of Mitzrayim. Okay, so this is when the Mitzrayim are coming after the Israelites, and this is the angel of the presence that's speaking to Moshe. And in this case, he's telling him what was going on in the hidden world. Personally, I believe this is Satan, Prince Mastema. So he's talking about how he got the Mitzrayim to pursue the Israelites even after, all the 10 plagues and all that. Okay, so verse 13, and I stood between the Mitzrayim and Yasharel, and we delivered Yasharel out of his hand and out of the hand of his people. And Yah brought them through the midst of the sea as if it were dry land. And all the peoples whom he brought to pursue after Yasharel, Yah, our sovereign ruler, cast them into the midst of the sea, into the depths of the abyss, beneath the children of Yasharel. Even as the people of Mitzrayim had cast their children into the river, he took vengeance on 1,000,000 of them, and 1,000 strong and energetic men were destroyed on account of one suckling of the children of your people, which they had thrown into the river. So here, I thought this verse 14 was interesting. So there's a comparison, and to me it sounds like he's comparing, saying, since the Mitzrayim, since the Egyptians threw your children into the river, he drowned them in the same river. 1,000,000 of those he took vengeance on. So 1,000 for each one of the Hebrew children that were thrown into the river. He drowned in their river. So again, there's this implication is that, they drowned in the Nile. Okay, so something else that we talked about were borders. And I end up talking about this a lot, but I just wanted to reiterate. Okay, so the borders of the land of Yasharel. Okay, so notice here that they also have the Nile here as a border. Okay, so they understand that east to the Nile is the border, the western border of the land of Yasharel. But notice, for whatever reason, people tend to stop right here. But that was something else. Another reason I went over just how long the Nile is, because it goes all the way down to like Lake Victoria at least, right? So why do they always stop right here? And then we have this river that goes through Iraq, present day. Okay. And the problem that I had with this is they're showing us this western border. I don't have a problem with this. This is the eastern border, and I'll eventually get to the Euphrates in another video. But then they tell us that those tribes that are mentioned between these two borders are all only in this area. So then what happened to all this area? And if this is a border to Yasharel, right, east of the Nile, which I agree with, why isn't this usually associated to the land of Shem, right? Because then we took a look and saw that the border of Shem was east of the Nile and all the way down, right? So that associated to Eastern Africa, which is where I'm looking in regards to the land of Yasharel now, okay? And that a lot of that came out of that Jubilees 10, I believe it was, where it talks about Ham and his sons, right, are going into their lands, okay, but they're already in his territory, which tells us that they are west of the Nile, okay? And as they're traveling along, Canaan eventually sees the land of Lebanon. Okay, so here's the Nile, okay? And they're traveling along the Nile and end up, Canaan ends up seeing some really good land, okay? So notice the Sahara here, all right? It is unlikely that he would have been in this area and looked over and saw some really good land. Okay, so it's more likely that he may have been here, you know, once the desert ends, right? It doesn't make sense to me that he would look over and see some desert and be like, I want to stay there. So it starts to get green down here, right? And then there's all those rivers down here. But all that to say, he very well could have been maybe down here, looking into this area. But again, I don't think so, because his area is this territory. So I don't think he would have got down here and then eventually was going to cross over. That's pretty far down. Okay, so anyway, all that to say, Canaan and his brothers and their father Ham were in their territory, okay? And it says, it brings up the Nile, right, in Jubilees 10, okay? So that right there tells us they must have been traveling south down the Nile, okay? Not over here in this area. And then again, when he goes into the area, it talks about his brethren coming to him, trying to save him. Bro, get out of the area. That's not your territory. So that also is consistent with what we see in Genesis and what we see in other parts of Scripture, talking about the territory and the borderline of the land of Shem, and also the border of the land of Yasharel, okay? So the Nile stands for both those borders, okay? The land of Shem for sure, and then portions of the Nile represent the western border for the land of Yasharel, aka the land of Canaan, aka the land of Lebanon. Okay, so I have another notable, going back into Jubilees, just something that I noticed as I was going through and reading. Okay, so this is Jubilees chapter 46, and I'm gonna start in verse 8. Okay, so here it says, and Yosef died in the 46th Jubilee, in the 6th week, in the 2nd year, and they buried him in the land of Mitzrayim. and all his brethren died after him. Okay, so the whole generation of the patriarchs passed away here in this 46th Jubilee. And the king of Mitzrayim went forth to war with the king of Canaan in the 47th Jubilee, in the second week in the second year. And the children of Yasharel brought forth all the bones of the children of Yaakov, save the bones of Yosef. And they buried them in the field in the double cave in the mountain. Okay. So Egypt is at war with Canaan. Okay. And then the Hebrews go and bury their fathers in the land of Canaan. Anyway, I'm going to continue, but it kind of sounds like the Egyptians may have felt slighted. Okay. And most of them returned to Mitzrayim. But a few of them remained in the mountains of Hebron, and Amram your father remained with them. So they went to bury their fathers, and most of them returned to Mitzrayim. But some of the Hebrews did not. Some of the Hebrews stayed in Canaan. And Amram, which is Moshe's father, being one of them. And the king of Canaan was victorious over the king of Mitzrayim, and he closed the gates of Mitzrayim. Okay, so this is interesting to me, because here when it says the king of Canaan was victorious over the king of Mitzrayim, and then he closed the gates. So, in my opinion, this statement means it is highly unlikely that Ramses II was the pharaoh when the Hebrews began to be enslaved. Okay, it was under this new king, okay, which was the king of Canaan, and then he was victorious over Mitzrayim, so then he became the new pharaoh. This is why this guy did not know anything about Yosef. So I didn't realize that before. I just thought that was interesting. And then also in this verse 13, it's a good breakdown too. He says, and he said to the people of Mitzrayim, behold, the people of the children of Yasharel have increased and multiplied more than we. Come and let us deal wisely with them before they become too many, and let us afflict them with slavery before war comes upon us, and before they too fight against us. Else they will join themselves unto our enemies, and get them up out of our land, for their hearts and faces are towards the land of Canaan. Okay, and he knew that because they came up there to bury their fathers. Okay, so this is probably why he ended up closing the border. So all that to say, I just thought that was very interesting. And notice here, where does it say this? Okay, so here, the king of Canaan was victorious over the king of Mitzrayim, and he closed the gates of Mitzrayim. Okay, according to Jubilees 10 and Jubilees 8, Canaan, remember, it would be south of Mitzrayim, of Egypt, which would put the gates of Mitzrayim, or the entrance, between Canaan and Egypt, or what we would call Upper Mitzrayim. Okay, I just thought that was interesting too. So when you go back and it's saying, like, you know, Avram entered Mitzrayim, you know, and those types of things, we actually get a understanding of where these gates are. So something else that definitely stuck out to me is I ended up looking into an ancient kingdom in East Africa, Aksum, and then before that, I'm still looking into this kingdom, the kingdom of Demot, but they were in the same area, and Yeha was the ancient capital. Okay, so I had never heard of this. I just Googled Yeha, Ethiopia, and this is what came up. I thought this was very interesting. So there's a little bed and breakfast here, it looks like, and it's called Yehuda, which is Judah in Hebrew, and it's considered Zion Way. I was like, okay, that's interesting. And so notice it's even on Jerusalem Street in Yeha, Ethiopia. And if I zoom out, you can see it's a very mountainous region. Okay, Actually, let me zoom out a little more so you can see. I think it's in the Ethiopian highlands. Okay, so just on the northern range of Ethiopia. And then there's also this Temple of Yeha, which also had some really interesting history. So I would definitely recommend, looking into that if you're interested. I didn't necessarily feel it was hard evidence one way or another, but they did say that they had found Judaic artifacts within this temple. But at the same time, they say that the temple was alleged to be for, I think, a moon goddess or something like that. So I just thought that was really interesting. So interesting enough in which I ended up doing a comparison. Okay, so I took a look at the elevation between Yeha, Ethiopia, and what we would consider, or what's called, Jerusalem today. I just call it the Roman Jerusalem at this point. So Roman Jerusalem is about 2,400 feet in elevation. Okay, this wasn't something I had looked into before, so that's probably another reason why it was pretty surprising to me. But anyway, all that to say, so the Roman Jerusalem is 2,400 feet. Okay, and let's see, the Yeha, Ethiopia elevation, okay, is located in a fertile basin with an altitude of 2,100 meters. So if we do 2,150, okay, so 2,100 meters is about 7,000 feet. So Yeha, Ethiopia is twice as high as Roman Jerusalem. So that was interesting to me. So then I was like, well, what about the average height of the elevation in what's Roman Israel today? The state of Israel lies at an average elevation of 500 meters above sea level. The highest mountain peak is at 2,200 meters. Okay, so let's take a look again at our converter. Okay, so the peak elevation over there is just under 7,300 feet. So if we compare that with the Ethiopian highlands, okay, here's the Ethiopian highlands here. All right, and notice, so let's see, it looks like Yeha would be within this, like somewhere up here. So the average for the Ethiopian highlands is just under 15,000 feet. So again, that's twice as high. I did not expect that. If you see down here some of the high mountains, this mountain is called Abuna Yosef. So Abuna is supposed to mean like father. They named this mountain Father Yosef. That was very interesting. It's standing at just under 14,000 feet. This one's over 15,000. This one's 11,000 feet. These are some serious mountains compared to the Roman Jerusalem and, that area that they're telling us. Okay, so again, I just want to reiterate what I'm saying and what I'm not saying. So it doesn't make sense to me that the Holy Land would be in this area. Okay, I think from scripture it makes more sense that they traveled down the Nile River. Okay, that the Hebrews, it sounds to me like a portion of this Nile River was considered the Reed Sea. But that said, I still have quite a few questions. One being, so I think most everybody will accept that this was ancient Egypt, ancient Mitzrayim. But at the same time, like when you go to Jubilees 9, it says that Cush got the first lot and he was east of Mitzrayim, which would have put him in the land of Shem. So that doesn't make sense to me. How could his land be in the land of Shem when the first brother west of the Nile is Mitzrayim? So Mitzrayim should be he's the furthest on the border of Ham's territory up here. So I hope that makes sense. Also, I have some serious questions about the Euphrates. I can't remember if I brought that up before or not, but I'm definitely actively looking into that. So Yah willing, I'll get more understanding on that, which I'll be able to bring out in another video. And fam, all this, in my opinion, okay, the significance of where the Holy Land is, this is going to play a big role in the coming delusions, in the coming deceptions, just as we've seen with what I consider like the foundational deceptions. Okay, these are strong deceptions that rule the minds of most people throughout the world. Okay, so deceptions such as religion. Okay, so religion hides the lesser gods. Okay, hides the shepherds of the nations. Okay, the deception of the cosmos, understanding the cosmos through heliocentrism rather than the geocentric terrarium that the Most High created, our world. Heliocentrism hides the Most High himself. Okay, that is a very strong deception. Race hides lineage. Okay, so those three things combined, which I've talked about before, will completely alter your perspective of this world and the Most High himself. That's extremely dangerous. Okay, and in my opinion, again, this is just as well along those lines. This counterfeit Holy Land is going to play a large role when the man of lawlessness gets here. I do believe that all truth matters because we are supposed to worship the Most High Yah in Ruach and truth.